I know you're no longer with ESPN, but where are you right now? Where can we check out your work?
Well, right now, guys, I'm taking a hiatus after I decided to basically leave ESPN. You know, guys, I'll be honest with you. I haven't really told a lot of people. I don't know if I'm going to write again. I'm doing a lot of things on social media, having fun. Obviously, I'm doing the 3 Knockdown rule with Mario. We have some plans for that show to take it to different, bigger platforms. And I'm working on some other projects right now. And I'll be honest with you guys. I don't know how you feel about it. Right now, the modern day of boxing, it's not a lot of fun to cover. For every Gonzalez Estrada rematch we get a lot of weeks and months of stuff that is not interesting. And this is my biggest problem with the game. And tell me if I've just become the old man telling the kids to get off the lawn, or if you guys are the exact same guy. We don't.
I'm 20. I'm 29, Mr. Kim, and I agree.
Thank you. So I'm not crazy. I'm not just a bitter old guy. I'm just old, but not bitter. Okay, good. So, right now, do me a favor. Whenever you guys keep doing this show, and you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Go to the top 10 pound-for-pound list on Ring Magazine and actually look at and try to figure out when are they fighting again.
That's a good point.
Most of them don't have fight schedules. And then ask yourself this. People go a little bit deeper. How many more times are they going to fight after that? Are we going to see any of our top guys, not named Canelo, who, by the way, is carrying the sport? No matter what you think of him, what he's doing right now is incredible for the game. He's keeping it relevant, and he's building his brand. Meanwhile, everyone else might get 1 or 2 fights. I mean, look, I get it. The guys are not going to fight once a month anymore. I'm long past that. I get it. Can we just get a guy to fight at least 3 times a year at the world-class level? So that's one problem I have with the game, is the quantity of content among the elite fighters.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I don't like is, so if you're not going to give me a volume of fights, can you ramp up the quality on a more consistent basis? That's not happening either. I'm actually kind of very angry in my own way that Spence Crawford is not going to happen. And I happened to be at Buddy McGirt's gym on Thursday morning, and I happened to run into James Toney, my favorite fighter of the 90s, who fought a lot during his time. And he is actually insulted and almost downright angered by the fact that Crawford, who's currently his favorite fighter, I believe, out of all the guys that fight today, and Spence are not fighting. He thinks that is an absolute insult to the sport of boxing and its fans and everyone that came before it. And I cannot disagree. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but that's my piece. And that's why right now I'm not in a rush to just write about what is a bunch of slop.
I wanted to bring this up because you mentioned you might be stepping away from boxing. And again, people that might not have been following you as long as I have, you've been covering boxing since, I believe, the late 90s. At least that's when I started reading you. You might have been going...
1996.
96.
When I first started. Now, I want to state for the record, I'm not going to leave boxing, but doing the day-to-day grind of covering boxing and watching every single fight from 3:30 in the afternoon to 11 like I was, I'm over it. I put in my time. I'm gonna always be in boxing. It's in my blood. But me being an advocate to try to make this game better, it's irretrievable. It's so broken, this system. I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but the whole business needs a reset. Look, fighters should get paid as much as possible. But nowadays, when they are so bold in talking about their financial portfolios and making up reasons not to fight, that to me is, I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing? So I'm still going to be in boxing. I'll talk about boxing. I'll cover boxing, but that whole ESPN experience to a certain degree kind of burnt me out. And I'm at an age now, like, you know what? I want to get paid better, and I want to have fun.
That's the thing, Steve, because ESPN, I mean, that's a Disney-owned company. Were they keeping you a little bit censored? Were they censoring you a little bit?
Yeah, I feel as though it became suppression of thought when you couldn't say the blunt truth and you were told not to write about certain things. I had to fight to cover certain non-ESPN shows. I thought that was very political. I thought that was a corporate agenda. And I've always said, and I have no issue saying it, the best stuff that I wrote at ESPN, the most entertaining stuff, the stuff that people really kind of knew me for, it was always the stuff that I turned in, but unfortunately, the public never really got to read that version of the story. And so that became old. And also, look, when you work at Disney, there are certain rules, there's a certain thought process, and certain philosophies that you have to follow. And I just made a decision over the summer. I said, you know what? I'm not having fun. I don't want to do this any longer than I have to. And at the end of September, I just said, hey, guys, come October 31st, I'm out of here. So do what you need to. And I haven't really looked back. I'm having a lot of fun doing some other things I can't really talk about now. I think soon enough all of you guys will know. But I'm happy. I'm very, very satisfied with my career because I just could not imagine doing what I had to at certain times and not being told or being told that, oh, no, we don't want to say that or this. And it's just like, good, give me a break. There comes a time that you have to let writers write. And I think what they wanted at ESPN is a very soft, sanitized, safe version of boxing coverage.
Man,
I get it. It is a corporation. I made the agreement to go there. I lived up to my end of the agreement for the time allotted on the contract, and I decided, you know what? I'm at an age now where I need to make some decisions. Look, no one likes a whiner. I hate that. So you better be a man. You better make a decision, put your balls on the line, and risk it. And so over the summer, it's the first time ever, guys, I decided when I had a secure job that I didn't want this job anymore. I said, you know what? So I'm going to try to get out, and I think I have some great options. And no matter how I feel about the current state of the business, guys, I'm going to let you know right now, I still love the sport of boxing. I just don't love what the business has become. And I'm very thankful I don't have to cover it the way I did before.
Well, listen, you started out at Max. Well, I think you started out another website, right? Before Max Boxing, was it Doghouse Boxing, or where were you at before that?
Well, it was. Here's what happened. I first did a radio show called The Main Event on an AM station where the owners of the show, Tim Abrams, Oscar Valdez, not the boxer, but a good friend of mine, bought time. And so it was on 8:70 AM on Saturday night. It was on from like 11 or 12 at midnight on Sunday to like 1:30. So we must have had about 5 people listening if you take away my mom and my relatives. So then I was writing for Boxing Online, and then Doug Fisher, who I met at the LA Boxing Club along with Gary Randall, were doing this thing called the Internet. I had no idea what this was. I was like, wow, you guys have these computers that you can like take with you. They're called laptops. I'd never seen, and they were there and they're showing people this website. And I go, what the hell is this? And they were doing a thing called House of Boxing. And then I ended up teaming up with them, and that kind of went sideways, and we went 2001 to Max Boxing. And as you say, or as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, well, epic time, man. At Max Boxing, one of my fondest memories, when I used to have a break over in school, and I would print your...
that.
Yeah, I would print your article. I think I told you this the last time you were here. I used to print your articles, you and Dougie's mailbag as well, and I would just read that, and it would get me through the breaks. Of course, I was supposed to be studying, so I guess I have to blame you for some poor grades there. But but you know what? You were on the internet before. Like it must have been a bit of a hassle too when you would go to events and all these other writers were like, "Oh, so what do you write for?" "Oh, maxboxing.com." "Oh, a website?" Like, so you were a pioneer in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So nobody's really. I don't think
it's
any.
interesting.
Yeah.
You know, when me and Doug would first have credential requests for the bigger fights, and this is from about 2000 to about 2003, a lot of the established newspaper writers, they would look down on us. They actually thought, what's this internet thing? It's not going to last. And we actually saw the metamorphosis from where we would be stuck either in the press box or in auxiliary media, and they would basically deride us by saying, you guys are only the internet. Well, within 6 years, it only became only the internet is really covering boxing, and next thing you know, we were getting pretty solid treatment. I've seen it, and now there is no newspaper business, unfortunately, for the most part. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I've been through different stages of this, and the way I look at it, guys, in terms of what I want to do, look, I put in my time, I put in my work. Now I want to do things like Sinatra. I want to do it my way, want to have fun. although I'm not always like out there writing, or you don't see my bio. Guys, trust me, I am working in boxing on different things. I can tell you about it soon, but not now. I feel very, very excited about my future. I'll be honest, guys. When the ESPN thing was going on, I don't say depressed, because I'm sorry. You have a good job. You still count your blessings. But I said, I don't really want to do this. If this is the way the last chapter of my career is going to go, doing this cookie cutter, sanitized, stale coverage, no, not me. I'm not doing that. Forget about it.
Were they were they telling you what you couldn't say on the 3 knockdown rule?
Basically, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I kept a lot of my stories and the way they came out, and they didn't want to really ruffle feathers and stuff like that. And, look, my writing became boring, honestly. If that wasn't my byline on there, a lot of those stories, I'd be like, oh, God, that is vanilla. Seriously, but that's what they wanted. And I really, really enjoy doing the 3 knockdown rule, because I could cut loose. And I could be myself. And they, even the ESPN Plus version of 3 knockdown rule, that wasn't my show. That's a show that they engineered, that they produced. They wanted it. I'd be like, that's not my vision of the show. And I thought it was real interesting. Like, I would want to go to cards that were not on Top Rank's umbrella or not on ESPN, but were really good cards. And I was told, well, we're not covering. It's not worth it. And there'd be like 3 championship fights on it. And to me, there came a point. I'm like, you know what? The money's good. It's great to be with this brand, but I'm not really satisfied here, and it's not a lot of fun. And so, look, like I told you before, you could whine, bitch, or moan, or you could go out there and make some decisions and bet on yourself.
Absolutely,
I chose the latter.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Because you've always been an open book when it comes to your opinions, and you always made it entertaining and funny. So for somebody to be telling you what to do and what not to do, it's like those old school radio jocks, and the producers are always trying to tell them what to do. It's like that the product would go down. And it's the same thing with you. Nobody likes somebody that's leashed. Come on.
And some of it, I don't even think it wasn't. I don't want this to be a complete indictment on the editors. I think it was a real corporate philosophy. I'll give you an example, guys. Something where I was like, God, this place may not be for me. I wrote a story last summer about Oscar De La Hoya's 1997, about how he fought 5 times and how, like, he did what Canelo's going to try to do this year, and how it was great for his career and great for boxing. So I interviewed Bob Arum, obviously, who promoted all 5 of those events, and I talked to Oscar De La Hoya, who was really great with me, gave me about 45 minutes of his time. So we went through every event, from Pernell Whitaker, Miguel Angel Gonzalez, David Kamau, Hector Camacho. So we finally get to Wilfredo Rivera, which was the last fight of that year. And you know what? I think he just said, you know what? I'm going to give Kim something that I've never told anyone. Let's have some fun with this. He told a story, not about the fight, not about the aftermath, not about the victory, but he said, Steve, one thing I remember most about that whole fight was, and he explained this story about how there was this really attractive Latin reporter, and she had been interviewing him, and she had been to a couple of his events the last year or so. And you could tell that there was some sparks between them. So Oscar said after the weigh-in, she came to my room to do an interview, and he did a little bit more than the interview, if you know what I mean. And they got it on. And he was panicked, and he called Gil Clancy, and he said, oh, my God, what do I do? I've lost my legs. And Gil says, no, kid, don't worry about it. It's the chase that leaves you tired. If you just did it with her, you're fine. Just have 5 eggs in the morning. You'll be fine. So I put that story in there, verbatim. I was told I could not have that in the story. And to me, that was the best part of the story.
Oh. Well,
that's working at Disney in a nutshell. There goes my Pulitzer Prize, guys. I had it right there.
Hey, that's breaking news right there, man. Jeez Louise. Oh, okay, so they're they had you on that leash, man. That's insane. So now you're planning on doing a good job and having fun. That's the main thing. And by the way, Steve, yeah. I know you're a busy guy. We don't want to keep you on too long, so you let us know when you gotta hop off.
No, I'm good. Look, I want to make this clear. I'm not ruling out writing because I have gotten offers, but the days of me chasing down every news story, I don't really want to do that. I actually kind of just want to do commentaries and special features or things that I want to say. But the days of me like, look, do I want to write about this Fury Joshua negotiation every 3 days as this thing twists? And no, I have no interest in that. Let someone else do it. Or if, a championship fight is made, I don't want to be told to just rush out and do it. Another thing that I thought was real interesting was that every time Conor McGregor said the word boxing, boy, I was told to get on that story immediately. It was amazing to me. Yeah, exactly, because it got hits. So I want to do commentaries and I want to do special features, and I want to do it when it's appropriate. I just want to say what's on my mind. So writing is still something I still love to do. I still believe that there is something very powerful and lasting about the written word, and there's something very, very satisfying about having your byline on top of a feature. Like, there's a sense of accomplishment as a writer. But look, I want to do some broadcasting. I want to do the podcast and make that into a bigger franchise. And there's some other things that I want to do behind the scenes. But, there's a new generation of writers. It's their turn to carry the sport on a day-to-day basis. And look, I have no problems with it. I still plan on going to fights. And in fact, guys, you talk about me in my relationship with boxing. Well, look, last Friday I drove about 2 hours to Coachella, California from Los Angeles to spend a day with Chocolatito. And then I had dinner with the co-manager of Dmitry Bivol, Oleg Frolov. This Tuesday, I went to a gym in the San Fernando Valley to see an old trainer, friend of mine, Shadi Chaluki, who has a very bright young Armenian fighter that's making his pro debut. Want to go visit him. Thursday, I spent the morning at Buddy McGirt's gym working out and also talking to Buddy and just hanging out a little bit. So boxing's in my DNA. I'm not going to leave it, but I think my role within the media landscape has certainly changed.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, but that's life, right? You like the Marines, adapt, improvise, and overcome, and it sounds like that's what you're doing. I wanted to ask you, because I could talk to you all night, man. So you tell me when you gotta go. And I also want to get some people to ask you questions here. But I wanted to ask you real quick,
Sure.
The Teofimo Lopez situation with Bob Arum. I don't understand the whole specifics of it. Maybe you can break it down for us. But did he essentially throw Top Rank under the bus?
To a certain degree. Look, obviously, if this was a marriage, someone would be sleeping at the Motel 6. Okay, so they've gone beyond just sleeping on the couch. That thing is bad. To me, what the real big story is gonna be is that after the Kambosos fight, which is a mandatory, and they have two differing viewpoints of this relationship. Teofimo Lopez believes that, hey, we're suing to get out of the contract. We're going to sue for breach of contract and collusion because Todd DeBuff wrote an email basically saying, hey, no one else bid on this fight. Top Rank will obviously contest that. And then they believe that they still have 3.5 years left on the contract where the new minimum is 1.25. I saw an interview where Teofimo Lopez's manager, David McWater, basically stated that the market has spoken. $4 million is what we are worth.
Whoa.
Top Rank's not going to agree with that. So now you have a situation is moving forward. Should Teofimo be stuck with Top Rank, how are they going to coexist? And if Taylor beats Ramirez on May 22nd, and I think he's the strong favorite in that fight, all due respect, I love Jose Ramirez. I don't think he's versatile or athletic enough to deal with Josh Taylor's multifaceted skill set. I get the sense Taylor's going to move up. That leaves 4 major belts at 140. So now, instead of getting Taylor, Teofimo may have to fight for a vacant belt. Okay. So you could say, well, they could do a purse bid again. Right. But do you think Triller is going to bid another $6 million for him to fight Jack Catterall?
I would.
So the mess. So I don't know where this is going to go, but it is ugly.
Oh, boy. Well, I mean, you hate to see a top talent like Teofimo Lopez. You hate to see a top talent like him get sidelined or essentially keep fighting a bunch of of nobodies. When did this start? When did the Teofimo Lopez versus Top Rank rift begin? Was it pre-Lomachenko?
No, I think it was after. Look, before the Lomachenko fight, they were at a loggerheads for money. Obviously, not having a live audience during the pandemic certainly changed the economics of that deal. But they were able to figure it out, both sides. And one of the amendments that they made was that Teofimo Lopez's contracted minimum on his current existing contract went from $150,000 to $1.25 million. Now, keep this in mind. A minimum means that, hey, we're going to start the negotiations at 1.25, but we could certainly negotiate more money. The real issue became when Teofimo beat Lomachenko. Now you have a kid in his camp who believes, wow, we are an absolute superstar. Look, I've been on record as saying I think he's got the highest upside. I believe he is going to be one of the best fighters in the world for a very long time. But we have to look at this reality, guys. That victory came in front of no studio, in front of no real live audience, played to a really good television ratings, but it's not like it generated $10 to $12 million. So that became something really interesting, is that this young man, precocious and talented, felt like I have conquered the world, while he really, if you think about it, he's just beginning his star run, and the company still believes, hey, we're in the process of building you into a star, while the opposite side, Team Lopez, says, no, we are a star and we want to be compensated for it. So that's the problem. I don't know what's going to happen here. I keep hearing that Teofimo believes that, hey, he's making statements about it. I'm not going to be with Top Rank. Top Rank believes, no, we didn't do anything wrong. Go ahead. After your Triller excursion, you're still our fighter. So I can't really tell you what's going to happen here, but I think that those two sides are really at opposite ends of the spectrum.
That's awful to hear, man, because again, Teofimo Lopez is a real talent, and like you said, he does seem to have some upside. The fact that he seems to think, I mean, is this normal nowadays for most of these young fighters, especially the lightweights, with all the, so sometimes listening to the conversations, it sounds like we're watching CNBC or something. They're talking about money, this, money, that. I mean, do these guys have who's talking to them? Who's got their ear that they think they're worth $6 million?
Guys, I've said this. The whole I don't want to call them the four kings. What an insult to Hagler, Duran, Leonard, Hearns. I'm not going to do it. Those four guys.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you,
I'm
Mr.
kind of
Kim.
over it all. They're never going to fight. Yeah, they're never going to fight. I mean, look.
Yes.
Hagler, Duran, Leonard, Hearns gave us 9 fights. And if you include Benitez, I think they gave us 12. Now, as it relates to the four guys, be honest, guys. Do you even see 5 fights happening within that quartet in the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? Be honest.
Not with the way they're talking.
No, because they're being very well compensated on various platforms. No one wants to work with one another. There's a huge divide within the sport of boxing, and there's no economic impetus for them to actually have to fight one another as long as they are getting guaranteed money. And when I hear Devin Haney, who's a very talented boxer, I've had a very good relationship with him, but when his counterpoint to a lot of these arguments with other fighters is, well, I made more money than you. Oh, God. I don't even, at that point, I'm thinking, I'm glad I don't have to cover this.
You mentioned something in the last episode of the 3 knockdown rule. What was Ryan Garcia asking for his next fight?
Okay. Contrary to what people are saying, there were negotiations for that Pacquiao fight. Okay. What I was told, and I've had this told to me by a couple people, is that he wanted non-refundable deposit money. In other words, he wanted a certain amount of money up front. And I heard it was an 8-figure sum that even if the fight didn't happen, he would still keep the money. I've heard that from several sources, and I heard that was one of the real breaking points of that negotiation.
So he wanted to get paid either way, whether it happened or not. Hey, give me some money.
Yeah, right.
That's what the homeless people in front of my building do, man.
Ryan Garcia is very popular, and he seems to be very ambitious. But I have a problem with him saying, well, if it's not Tank or Manny, I don't want to fight anybody. Tell that to Golden Boy. Well, you're painting your own promoter into a real corner, and realistically, the Pacquiao fight, I don't know what the odds were that you're really going to get it. You know Tank was not going to fight you because the PBC is not going to work with the zone or vice versa in any fashion. So tell me, guys, doesn't that come off as grandstanding?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can't see it any other way.
And so now, okay, so Ryan Garcia, we don't know when he's going to fight. Tank Davis is going to, play hopscotch, and he's going to try to be the low-rent, modern-day version of Henry Armstrong by winning a title at 140. Okay? Talking about the cheapening of historical achievements there, right? Keo's going to fight Kambosos, and then he's going through the ugliest divorce this side of Britney Spears. And then Devin Haney, look, at least I kind of like the Linares fight. I've always had a soft spot for Linares, so I can't even really be too critical of that fight. But tell me what evidence there is of these guys actually mixing it up.
Oh boy! Well, let me tell you, man. It looks bleak. Let's just put it that way, man. It's by the way, listen. Let me get a couple of questions here from the people here because I've been asking too much. People are gonna kill me tomorrow morning. By the way, somebody in the chat says somebody says Floyd killed the game. Oof. Well, maybe, man. Maybe.
Okay, that's a strong statement. I've heard that a lot. But let me defend Floyd. Okay, and at the end of the day, at least the money he earned, there was something tangible. People bought tickets, and they bought pay-per-view. So no matter how many millions he got, there was tangible evidence that he was worth it. What evidence is there that these young guys who are earning $3-4 million are actually worth it? They're actually disrupting the market worse than Floyd. Now, did Floyd judiciously matchmake? Did he spearhead a couple of trends that I think are not healthy for the sport? Yeah, absolutely. But, when Teofimo Lopez beat Lomachenko, I remember him distinctly saying at the press conference, well, before anyone becomes money Mayweather, you got to be pretty boy Floyd Mayweather. And I was like, good. Well, he skipped right over that too.
Jeez.
So it's easy to scapegoat Mayweather, but look, guys, and I'm a big Pacquiao fan. The way he's handling this upcoming fight, it's just like, oh God, I'm glad I don't have to cover that.
Yeah, you got your that's a blessing right there, man. All right, let's get some questions here from the panel. Gonzalo, you want to ask something?
Yeah. Breaking up.
You're breaking up, Gonzalo.
You're breaking up.
All right, let's go to Johnny Boy. Johnny Boy, you want to ask something?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Well, Mr. Mr. Kim. Well, I always said you don't even have to go all the way back to Duran and Hearns and Hagler and Leonard. You can just look at what was going on 15 years ago with Pacquiao and Marquez and Barrera and them guys. They had a dozen some odd fights in between each other too, and fucking excuse me. but yeah, man, like
Johnny Boy.
Yes, sir.
That's a great point. And Johnny Boy, that is an excellent point. And I should punish myself for overlooking it because I was basically at every single one of those fights except Barrera against Pacquiao in 2003. That was in San Antonio. And Johnny brings up a great point. Look, when you have a position like this in boxing, I believe that there is a responsibility to carry the sport. And look, no one is saying we don't want you to make money. We want you to make fights. At the end of the day, there's too many fans. They act like these fighters stockbrokers or financial analysts. I call those guys managers. My God, you're not getting a piece of the action. If you want to invest in something, go to Bitcoin. But the money that your favorite fighter makes, you're not getting a piece of it. And That was a great stretch, though, Johnny. I look at that era, and I have all my credentials on my wall of credentials in my office. I feel very, very lucky I was able to go to most of those fights.
Yeah, well, and real quickly, I know we got a couple people up here, but I just, and then, even, like I say, even when I was a kid watching back then, or 11, 12, 13, Pacquiao got like 300 grand for fighting Barrera, who was like, third on the pound for pound list at the time? Something like that. And he didn't cry
Johnny,
about the money. He didn't tweet anybody any derogatory shit. He just went to another country and fought the top 3 pound for pounder in the world for 300 grand. So
yeah. I mean, look, Manny had some issues with Murad Muhammad, his original promoter that brought him to the States. And look, that became a lawsuit. In fact, one of my stories was brought up in court against Murad Muhammad. That's a funny story for another day. But you're right. Look, if you go back to the historic nature of boxing and you look at the greatest fights, and then I guess ESPN just did the 50th anniversary of Ali Frazier, I don't really know what either guy made. And quite frankly, I don't give a damn. And so one of the best things to happen to the sport of boxing and the fighters are the multiple platforms like the Zone and Triller getting involved and boosting the money. But there's a downside to it. Because it has become an arms race, Johnny, and every platform wants to sign their franchise fighters, like the Zone did with Demetrius Andrade, Devin Haney, Danny Roman, and obviously Canelo. The problem is then the divided sport even becomes more fractured because the Zone expects those guys' biggest fights to be on their network, so they're not going to cross the street. So it's easy to blame the PBC because I do think they are the biggest offender, but that everyone is guilty of that to a certain degree. They want to protect their platform, their contracts with their fighters on their airwaves. And I've said this, it's not popular, but I think this is absolutely true. Sanctioning bodies are bad. They're not as bad as exclusive network contracts in terms of keeping fights from happening.
Yeah, I've said it before. I
was just going to say thank you for responding to my question, Mr. Kim. Thank you.
Oh, anytime, Johnny. Appreciate it.
Johnny on his best behavior. Yeah, I've said it before. I loathe the alphabet organizations, but like I remember you always saying that some fighters need those alphabet belts. They make the on the marquee. It looks good, champion, and most people don't know the difference, so they go, oh, champion. They think it's a real lineal champ, but yeah, it's a give and take affair. It's a symbiotic relationship, in other words. Anybody else got a question?
I have one.
Go ahead, MTC.
Do you think Teofimo is going to lose lots of years in his career in court? I mean, I've seen Matchroom basically grooming him on their broadcast on the Zone, to be a Matchroom fighter. But how much time do you think he could get caught up in court? If he tries to go through that ugly divorce you mentioned.
That's a great question. That is a great question. I hadn't really thought about it, but I certainly hope this is not Mikey Garcia 2.0, who lost $2.5 million, and I believe about $15 million. I estimated that a couple years ago for a couple stories that I did on Mikey. But I think there's a difference here. Mikey Garcia, I give him credit, and I know some of you may not like what you're going to hear, but he's the one guy that admitted, I box for money. I'm good at this, and I can earn a lot of money, and that's why I do it. So he was the ultimate mercenary. Teofimo's a little bit different. I think him and his father really love boxing, and they believe that they're destined for greatness. But you're right. This could get bogged down in court. What really alarms me, and this dovetails into your question about losing years off the career and obviously the development of a fighter, right now, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Teofimo is 23 years old. It looks to me like he's headed to already being the twice-a-year fighter.
Oof.
I am a firm believer in this. You should not be a twice-a-year fighter till at least your 26th, 27th birthday because you still get better and can develop those tools in real fights. And me and Buddy Bagert, every time I'm at his gym, we talk about it. Look at Buddy's record. He didn't get a title shot till about his 45th fight. And he said, Steve, my guys, my era were much more seasoned. And one of the reasons, guys, a lot of these big fights are duds and nothing happens for at least 4 or 5 rounds, the inactivity is causing ring rust So by the time these guys finally face each other, they haven't been hit in like 7-8 months in real battle. They're actually afraid to get in there. That Joe Goosen talks about that a lot, and me and Joe had a conversation about that about 10 days ago. So a lot of these things affect the game on so many layers. But going back to the original question, yes, I think there's a concern that if Teofimo is absolutely dug in his heels, that I'm not going back to Top Rank, and Top Rank saying, oh, no. We got 3.5 years left. You're right. This could absolutely become a stalemate.
It's a shame because he went from he basically like got fast tracked from Magdaleno to I forgot who next. Then Comey and then Loma in like what 2 years, a year and a half.
Yeah, I mean, look.
I mean, it was a meteoric rise in sport.
There's no doubt. Look, I'll give myself some credit. I got this one right. I knew by a second, third pro fight, I knew this kid was going to go somewhere. I remember telling Todd DeBuff, "That's your guy." I go, he goes, what? I'm telling you. Shakur Stevenson's very good. Michael Conlan's very popular. But I said, that's your guy. He just had it. And look, his last 3 fights are Nakatani, Richard Comey, Lomachenko. That's why I give him a little bit more of a pass compared to those other 3 guys, his colleagues at 130 and 135. But I am concerned about his future. And it always becomes a little bit bothersome. And I think you guys can appreciate this because we're all probably at the same age. We all probably enjoyed the same era of boxing. When it came to guys like Hagler, Hearns, Duran, Michael McCallum, even James Toney and Bernard Hopkins going a little bit later, I'm sure the money was important. Everyone loves money. This is what they do. This is their job. This is their profession. But it was never first and foremost on their mind. They cared about being boxers. And sometimes I just don't get that sense. And then that's fine. That's certainly their prerogative. But me as a fan doesn't mean I have to support it either.
It's a great point. That's a great point. I keep telling people, look, listen, yeah, these guys are making money. They want to be secure for the future. They want to secure the future. But at the same time, we're paying too, and we're not getting paid $2 million per fight over here. You know, we're not making $4 or $6 million a year. We got to pay for DAZN. We got to pay for ESPN. We got to pay for Showtime. Now, on top of that, you're asking us for pay-per-view on Fiverr or Spreaker, whatever it's called. I mean, it's a little ridiculous, man.
I make $4 or $5 million a year.
Yeah, I'm sure you do, man. I'm sure you do. Monopoly money. Hey, Gonzalo, you want to ask a question?
Great. You sound good.
Gonzalo, we can't hear you, man. Your audio's fucked up, man.
Can't hear him? You serious?
Yeah, I can't hear him. Can you guys hear him?
Yeah, you muted him, man.
Oh,
yeah,
okay, sorry.
Clear for me.
Fine, yeah. Recognize made the $4 million off of Vig after this football season.
That's right. Yeah. All right, Gonzalo, I got you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, man.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I got 2% battery. I'm driving around here in the Philippines. Hell is hot as hell. One question, Mr. Kim. Your thoughts on David Benavidez? I know he's 24. He got time on his side. He was a fat kid. He made a mistake. He fucked up. He did cocaine. And with the COVID thing, him being fat, he kind of struggled to get the last days of training that he needed to drop the weight. Well, that's in the past. He lost the strap 2 times on the scales. Moving forward, a lot of these fighters like Charlo, you need to take a COVID test. Canelo, I don't want to fight Mexicans. He's a young dude at 24. Like I said, he got time on his side. Is he being treated a little unfairly where they're judging him based on what happened on the scales? They're judging the ability of a fighter he is, because I think he's a good fighter. He's an exciting fighter. And I see that he's being maybe talked a little bit down on. What do you think, Mr. Kim?
Gonzalo, I think you make some very valid points. Look, when a Mexican fighter says, well, I don't want to fight another Mexican, and then another fighter says, well, if you don't get a vaccination, I'm not going to fight you. Again, reason number 843 that I'm glad I'm not covering this daily. I mean, good Lord, what are we doing? But putting all that aside, David Benavidez, in my view, is one of the 5 best offensive fighters in the sport. And I still remember when I would work out at Wild Card. I still do, but it hasn't been open in a year. But I remember distinctly in 2009, 2010, when his brother, Jose Benavidez, was a very highly regarded prospect. I'd be working out there. And I still remember that David Benavidez and Andy Ruiz would be at the gym. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I thought they were two fat kids trying to lose weight. I never actually thought they were really good boxers.
That's fucking hilarious, huh? Because he said he was 14 and he was fighting Latif Coyote, a dude that was all scarred up in the face. This guy's just a teenager and he's getting all that experience. And I like how he talks.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's the last thing.
Yeah. You know, it was funny. Like, those guys would be shadow boxing, and I'd be like, man, for two fat kids, they have, like, good hand speed. And so sometimes you don't judge a book by its cover. But here's, look, with Benavidez, he fights tomorrow. He's got to get Ronald Ellis out of there. Don't do a Caleb Plant and let a lesser guy stick around and bore the audience. Because in my view, if he blows out Ronald Ellis early and has a spectacular knockout, I'm going to ask all you guys right now, who would you rather see in September versus Canelo? Caleb Plant or Benavidez? Let's go one by one. Let's take a poll.
Benavidez.
Yeah, come on.
Benavidez. Yeah.
It's a unanimous decision, and at that point, belts don't matter. So I'm with you guys. I think Benavidez is a highly, highly skilled guy. He's got a mean streak on him. And look, he's made some mistakes from cocaine to, not understanding what bubble life is. But I think he showed today he could still make 68. And I have a hard time believing that a Canelo-Benavidez fight is not going to happen. That's the perfect fight for Mexican Independence Day weekend one of these years.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
I agree with that.
Even though Benavidez is what, Guatemalan, half Guatemalan or something? Honduran?
Nah, come on, man.
That's what Gonzalez said.
He is. He's
I know he is, but I'm saying
Guatemalan, I think.
Ecuadorian.
I think it's
Ecuadorian.
Yeah.
It's Mexican Ecuadorian.
Well, you know me. Once you go past Guatemala, it's all the same to me. But listen,
Well, I have a question for Steve Kim. I always wanted to ask him this. Kim, it's a fantasy fight. At 154. Yeah. At 154, Mike McCallum, Tommy Hearns.
Ooh, am I in on this?
McCallum
too. I'm with you there. Yep.
That ever lived. He's one of the most underrated fighters ever, Mike McCallum. And unfortunately, he was not a popular guy. He was Jamaican, had a lot of issues with Emmanuel Stewart, who basically bypassed him for the Duran fight in favor of Tommy Hearns. That ended up in a lawsuit. But Mike McCallum, at his best, was a pure technician and a great body puncher, had a really high boxing IQ. And this is a guy that beat Milton McCrory. He iced Donald Curry in one of the most memorable fights. Had a fight of the year that ended up as a draw with a very young, talented James Toney, that ended up winning titles all the way up to 75. So every time I see Mike McCallum, he doesn't really remember me or know who I am. I always remind him of the Curry knockout, summer of '87. It brings a smile to his face. And one of those guys, every generation has a guy that's avoided by everybody and that was really, really talented. I think in that era, that guy is the body snatcher.
Hey, that's an interesting thing there. Who would you say is the Mike McCallum of this era? The guy that's good but hasn't yet gotten that big shot at the big time?
That's a great question. A lot of people would say Demetrius Andre, but he doesn't even have the resume of a McCallum. And I like Demetrius, but God, he's such a weird guy. He really is, but he's talented. But I don't like the way his career's been handled. Who is that guy? You'd have to give me.
Couldn't be Terrence Crawford. Couldn't be Terrence Crawford.
Put me on the spot there.
Hey, by the way, Steve, we got a Jay here on the line. He's a Terrence Crawford super fan. He's saying Terrence Crawford.
That could be the guy. You know what? I think Crawford is a lot like Gennady Golovkin when he first came to America. Before Gennady Golovkin started getting some of the bigger fights, every champion was avoiding him. He was also a victim of the PBC divide because guys like Jacobs wouldn't fight him for a couple of years. Peter Quillen flat out said, "Nah, we don't need him." And to me, Terrence Crawford and Golovkin are in the same boat. And this is what I hate, that there is no nuance to a lot of these arguments online because everyone takes this political position based on what promoter or advisor a fighter's with. Terrence Crawford has flat out been avoided. Look, you can say that both
I like this
Golovkin
guy.
and Crawford have relatively weak resumes. But then you can also say they've been avoided. And that's the God's honest truth. And when a guy like James Toney, when I ask him, hey, who do you like today? He says, not a lot of guys, but I like Terrence Crawford, though. That, to me, says a lot. James Toney, who has the old saying, he throws out compliments like manhole covers. That, to me, is telling. And I'm disturbed when Errol Spence, who I really like personally, starts making videos saying, well, maybe now it's 80-20. You know, look, it's bad enough we're not getting the fight, Errol. It's even worse when you seem to be enjoying it. That's where I think boxing is losing a lot of appeal to me. That stuff right there.
Well, you mentioned Demetrius Andrade being a weird fella. It seems to me like Errol Spence is right there with Joey Gamache and Hector Camacho in terms of weirdness. I mean, I see his videos on the internet. He's driving around in a motorcycle in the woods, shooting beavers or something. I mean, I don't know what's going on with the fella, but he does seem a little bit strange.
Really?
Yeah, man. I mean, he's a little bit he's a bit out there. Let's just put it that way. Let me ask something precise. Are you there? Precise?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You got a question for the Kimster?
Sure. Any scoop, info, or opinion on AJ Fury? Will it happen? And do you think the winner of Joyce Usyk gets the winner of that fight?
You know, that's a great question. I called a pretty good source yesterday, and I said, look, is this thing breaking apart, Fury Wilder? And they said, no, it's going to happen. They still believe it's going to happen. They still got to work out the venue. It's still an issue because of the COVID. And I said, well, where does Deontay Wilder stand in this? And my source said, look, it really is about how much money Wilder's going to get in the interim to just kind of like lay down or back down. And look, he's still going to be in the mix, no matter what we think of Deontay Wilder or his host of excuses. He's still a relatively highly ranked heavyweight. He's still one of the top 4 or 5 heavyweights in the world. The question is, because I was told this by Eddie and Bob Arum for months, and I don't know if this has changed. Originally, when Fury Wilder was being negotiated, it was a 2-fight deal. So for a whole year, every other heavyweight was going to be shut out. But they have an issue here, and I've talked to the representatives of Usyk. He's the WBO mandatory. They're sick of waiting. And I would not be surprised if Usyk just says, you know what, I've played the ball game, I've taken the step aside, and I've been told he hasn't gotten his money from that. I'm not waiting anymore. It would not surprise me if Usyk and his representatives basically say, you get to do it one time, and then I'm going to enforce my WBO mandatory. And I don't know what happens at that point. But, you know, Eddie Hearn is in Dallas. I didn't make the trip out. Eddie Hearn's telling people the deal is basically done, but they still have to figure out a date and secure a venue. You know, who knows? But the further and further they go along in this fight, I don't know if you fellows agree with me, I'm kind of losing interest in that fight. Get on with it. Or don't do it. But let's move on here. Please.
You know,
well, I was just. Can I just say one more thing, BDA, real quick?
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
I was just gonna say, when I've been saying, Mr. Kim, like Usyk, here's this guy. He's had 2 fights in 2 years. He was just cruiserweight undisputed 2 years ago, and he's sitting in here line waiting for his frickin' shot. Like, well, what the hell's going on? What are you guys doing over there? Either you know, sign up and fight each other, or give me my shot.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. Look, if you look at Golovkin, his career since he went into the zone, there's nothing there. It's not even fun anymore. I don't like now the Munguia fight's not going to happen. My understanding is that they're actually working on the Murata fight in late December, and I'm thinking, hey guys, how about the fight in the spring or summer? That career, to me, I never thought would be uninteresting or boring. I'm officially bored now by Golovkin. I never thought I'd say that. Look, it's great for him. He's getting paid a lot. But I want to see him fight either often or against somebody. I'm not getting either. As it relates to Usyk, you're right. He's had 2 uninspiring performances at heavyweight. Hasn't had a chance to really develop into one. And the scary part is there's about 20 fighters we could say that about. It's not just Usyk.
Absolutely. Absolutely, that's a good point, and that's a good point you brought up, Johnny Boy. I mean that, that Fury Joshua. It's not on my top. It's on my top 10, but I think it's not going to be that fun a fight if they ever get in there in the ring. Jay, you got a question for Steve Kim?
Well, it sounds like you and I read each other's minds because you're saying a lot of the same stuff I've been saying since before Mr. BDA was nice enough to let me into this whole this panel and everything. Not as much a question, but if we have time for a small debate between Hearns and
no, we don't have time. We don't have time right now.
Okay, sorry,
Jay.
Sorry,
that's okay. That's all right.
I'm late to the show, so anyway.
That's all right.
I saw the video on McCallum saying that he was avoided by a lot of people. Do you really buy the fact that he was avoided by Hagler?
No, not.
That's basically
Hagler.
my question.
Not really,
because I really don't buy
Hagler
that
was
one. I
at
really don't buy that
160.
one.
I
Go
don't
ahead.
really leave it there. That one I don't. Hagler was a clear 160, and McCallum really, where he's really bitter is the Durant fight. And I knew Emmanuel Stewart very well. God rest his soul, one of the great men I ever met. And he made it clear to me, so Steve, even though Mike McCallum was the WBA mandatory to Durant, he was told in no certain terms by, I think his name was Louis Spada of the WBA, who was very closely tied. I think he was one of the guys that probably had a piece of Durant off the record. They said, we're not fighting McCallum. The risk-reward is just too bad. But we'll fight Hearns. That's a big money fight. And so Emmanuel Stewart said, look, I had a choice to make. If I enforced the WBA mandatory with McCallum, Durant was just going to vacate and do something else. And that's the reality. But unfortunately, McCallum was so angered by that, he left Emmanuel Stewart. And when he fought Milton McCrory, who was still at Kronk, that was a really big grudge match, I remember, when he ended up stopping, I think, McCrory in rounds 9 or 10 on ABC.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think Hagler was really in that realm.
Yeah, he was still. There's always those fights that never happen. I mean, we never got to see Vernon Forrest against De La Hoya or Winky Wright De La Hoya. Floyd Mayweather Margarito. There's always fights that slip through the
Trinidad Shane Mosley.
Yeah, Trinidad Shane Mosley. Steve, again, you tell us, man, when you gotta go. So we don't want to keep.
I can go about 10 more minutes. I'm enjoying this conversation, guys. I would say one thing, and this is what I've done. That in terms of being a boxing fan, to keep yourself interested in the sport and to keep yourself from being burnt out, just watch what you want to. You don't have to watch everything. And be a discerning fan. I've said this. When you go to a movie and they show about, 15 minutes worth of previews, there are movies that I look at, the preview, I'm like, oh, I'll watch that. There's other ones I'm like, oh, you're going to have to pay me to watch that shit. Other ones, you're like, I'll think about it. That one, I'll watch it on cable. That one I'll never watch.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I am with boxing. I'm not watching everything nowadays. I'm really not. I used to. As of recently, when I still was working at ESPN, I guess I had to. But the days of me watching absolutely everything, nah.
Yeah.
We can think about it, guys. I love the NFL. I love football. Yeah. I'm a huge college football fan. I love the Miami Hurricanes. We only watch the games we
South
want.
Florida.
Right? I only watch, we don't watch everything. We watch what we want and enjoy.
Exactly, man. Hey, listen, that's great advice because I didn't see the Yildirim Canelo fight. I didn't stay up for that. I was doing something else and I went to bed. And listen, best, 9 minutes of my life saved, man. I didn't want to watch that crap. And especially now where everything's a la carte, you a la carte. You watch the zone, you can rewatch it whenever you want. ESPN as well. So that's great advice, man. That is, yeah,
hey,
it's
BDA,
true.
I want to ask Kim one more question, if he can answer this. If he can answer it. Who are the hardest promotion team, if you can answer this, to deal with when it comes to cross promotion and negotiating?
Oh, PBC.
I don't believe that.
That's
PBC.
That's not even
I knew.
to me. It is the PBC, and then that's pretty much a universal answer throughout the industry. And look, they have some very good people there, like Tom Brown, men like that. And it's really not about them, though. You know who it's about. Al Heyman wanted to monopolize boxing. People have to understand. In 2015, when the PBC began, they were not trying to bring boxing to the masses or make it a big. No, they weren't. That was a bunch of media-fed bullshit. That was an agenda that was pushed. and that was a party line that certain people bought hook, line, and sinker. Their goal was to do a scorched earth policy and basically try to eventually monopolize the sport of boxing. That's what that all was all about. Because the same people that talked about free boxing for all are now giving you a host of pay-per-views in the upcoming months. Just wait for the announcement. So tell me, was that about advancing the sport, or was it about driving everybody out?
Driving everybody out. That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. BDA, I love this guy.
It's Steve Kim, Jay. He's still. We already told him on the.
No, I know, but I mean, he's saying everything I've been saying on the air for a long time, and I don't even have the resources he has.
Well, listen, hey, great minds think alike, man. Now, Steve, I want to clarify something. On Twitter, you said recently, I think, that the best fight you ever saw live was Castillo Corrales, or maybe I'm wrong. Was it you or was it Doug? Yeah.
That was me. May 7th, 2005. It was during the weekend of the Boxing Writers Association dinner. And it was interesting, guys. Even though 300,000 people claimed to have been there, they only had about 3,200 people there at the Mandalay Bay. Mm-hmm. And, I actually have something in my office. Boxing News did a top 100 fights of all time. It's right here on my desk. I don't want to get it because it's under a lot of other magazines. I think they ranked it in the top 5 of all time. So it's right up there with Hagler, Hearns, and other ones. So, look, I've told people I will never go to a fight that vicious, that brutal, that dramatic ever again. And I'm good with it because I was lucky to be at that one.
Listen, but I thought it was Barrera Morales 1. Maybe I'm confusing you with Doug Fisher's pick.
Well, Barrera Morales 1 is in my Mount Rushmore, and I was very lucky because I was actually literally on the ring apron calling the action for the Top Rank International. My partner was the late, great Gennaro Hernandez. So I was literally about 15 feet away from Jim Lampley and Larry Merchant. That right there is on my Mount Rushmore. My Mount Rushmore of fights that I've been to live, obviously Castillo Corrales 1, Barrera Morales 1, Bradley Provodnikov, and I would say Israel Vasquez against Rafael Marquez 3.
Yeah, that was a badass fight.
Damn, there, you were lucky.
I thought he robbed on that one.
Man, you were lucky. You were at all those fights. That's amazing, man. That is amazing. Yeah. By the way, I remember the day after. Oh no, not the day. I think a week after. I showed my father the Castillo Corrales fight, and he'd been watching boxing for a while too. Even there was a point. I think it was a 6th round. He said, "All right, this is getting to be too much. Like the violence was too much for him." I said, "All right, that's how you know it was a good fight, man." Because fuck, they went.
You know what's interesting, guys? And this would be something that I'd like to write. And I know every time I brought it up, ESPN always tried to back it up, or they would just kind of ignore it. I really think the result of that fight, the controversial nature of the way Diego Corrales spit out his mouthpiece and did a great job of strategically keeping himself in there, and I give him a lot of credit for it, I think Jose Luis Castillo belongs in the Hall of Fame. And I don't know why he doesn't get more support. If you look at his record from 2000 to about 2004, he had an unbelievable run. And to this day, I will still say he beat Mayweather in that first fight. I mean, every time I watch it, it gets wider. There's no
like
way
either 7-5 or 8-4.
I mean, you might as well be making me interviewing me saying the same thing. This guy's saying everything I've been saying for years.
But you know what, man? With Castillo,
he gets paid to say it, and people listen to him more. But I respect everything he's saying.
Hey,
not
Steve Kim,
you agree with me, but
I'm not so sure
I respect it all.
Do you remember Steve Kim? Do you remember George Foreman? They asked him on the HBO broadcast. So, what do you think? He's like, "Nah, he lost this fight." Talking about Mayweather before they announced it.
Yeah.
Because George Foreman was real honest, right? Like he was just
111.
Yeah, I can see that.
Excuse me. If you look at Jose Luis Castillo, I think he was the first person to beat a very good fighter by the name of Stevie Johnston.
Mm-hmm.
He beat Joel. He beat Joel
Diaz, second,
or his brother. He beat his brother, who at the time had a title, then they vacated, but he beat him. He beat Cesar Bazan, knocked him out. He beat Joel Casamayor in a really, really good fight. He battled Floyd Mayweather twice. I even thought the rematch was pretty close. Floyd Mayweather just ran around the ring that night. That was one of the boringest fights ever. But really examine what Jose Luis Castillo did from about 2000 to about 2004. I personally, probably next year, I'm going to start voting for him in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. Hey, don't forget Lascano too. He beat the crap out of Lascano at that point for the
and Julio Diaz
18-fight winning streak
in a unification fight.
Julio Diaz, that's the guy. Julio Diaz.
Yeah, Antonio was his brother that lost to Margarito and Shea Mosley.
Right. So
yeah.
I don't. It's really a shame.
90 seconds.
Look, and I know it's tainted. He didn't make weight, but he did beat Corrales in the second fight. But also, Jose Luis Castillo, a lot of fans have never forgiven him for not making weight and ruining the third fight. And look, I was out there that weekend. Me and Doug Fisher had just arrived in Las Vegas. We had taken our bags out of the trunk, and we were basically told, guys, I think the fight's off. We're like, what do you mean?
Oh.
Castillo blew the
60 seconds.
One of the most depressing weekends we have ever spent in Las Vegas, because Showtime ended up going with the card that night, and I think it was like Vic Darchinyan fighting Louis Maldonado, and there was like 3 people inside the arena. What a buzzkill. Jeez.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's like hearing you're gonna bang a prime Jenna Jameson and fucking an old bag shows up. I mean, I can understand that. In terms of the actual, Hall of Fame, now that they've changed it to about 3 years after retirement, where they can be considered, that's gonna make it all that much harder for him to get in, right? Castillo, that is.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I thought it really affected a guy like Tim Bradley, unfortunately, who I believe certainly had a great run. He would get my vote next year. I don't understand why.
10
I think
seconds.
Personally, they did it because they want more of the big names to get in there, because they want people to show up to the parade, to the weekend. Because, look, they're also a business, too. But I didn't realize that there was such a need to speed this process up. Like, I had a severe disagreement with the people that didn't vote James Toney in, not because you think he's not a great fighter. James Toney was my favorite fighter of the early 90s, and I showed him my Hall of Fame ballot, which had a black check mark next to his name. And here's what I don't understand about the James Toney exclusion. The guy was literally in 2 fights of the year, 12 years apart, from Mike McCallum 1 to Vasily Zhirov in 2003. He was the last real active American champion that would regularly take non-title fights. So he truly was a throwback from 1991 to 1994 when he faced Roy Jones, and he kind of blew that fight in a training camp where for some reason he didn't train very hard, but he fought like 23, 24 times. That's unbelievable for this era. And then he becomes a cruiserweight champion, and then obviously there was the steroid bust against John Ruiz, and I think there's a lot of evidence that was there because he was rehabbing a bicep injury. But again, so he broke the rules. It is what it is. I get it. But the biggest issue I have is when people say, well, I could never vote for a drug abuser or someone that got busted for PEDs. And I say, okay, if that is your standard, let's be consistent with it, because in 10 to 15 years, are these same people not going to vote for Canelo Alvarez?
Very good point.
That's a great point. See, Kim, they do this in baseball too. Like in Barry Bonds, for instance, probably the best player of all time, one of the best players of all time. He's not in it. And I'm sure there's a lot of guys that took and they're in the Hall of Fame. They were nowhere near as good as him.
Look, in my view, Barry Bonds is a Hall of Famer. Roger Clemens is a Hall of Famer. There's a few other guys. You got to have some nuance here. And James Toney, if you just cut off his career for his middleweight and super middleweight run, and then maybe stretch it out to the Zhirov fight, tell me that's not a Hall of Fame career.
Absolutely.
Right there.
Oh, he's a Hall of Famer for sure. He's great. Like, he was great on the eye, and his resume was really good. Shit.
Hey, by the way, Jose Suleiman is in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. So wrap your brain.
James Toney should be in the Hall of Fame. Right?
Yeah.
If Suleiman is in the Hall of Fame.
I'm leading to one other fighter that needs to be voted in, Mr. Kim. If you can listen to me, I'm pleading his case. Wilfredo Vasquez has been overlooked for years. 3-time world champ, 9 defenses, all on the road. He's not getting voted in. Since you do sit on the board, can you help me campaign for him, please?
Well, I'm not really on the board. I'm a voter. I'm one of those guys that turns in a ballot. I don't really have any pull or power. Vasquez, I remember, was a very solid guy. I think what hurts him is that despite being Puerto Rican, he didn't really have that great popularity. Like, I've always thought Camacho Sr. was a little bit overrated because the last 15 years of his career, he was unwatchable after Edwin Rosario cracked him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, there's actually people that think that Camacho was better or had a better career than Miguel Cotto, which I don't understand. A guy like Vasquez, you're right. You got to have people that have the ability to vote, that are really take this seriously, and leave personal biases aside. Look, when Andre Ward was a fighter, I did not get along with him. I was not a fan of him. But you know what? I voted for him. He earned it. And I do wonder if a lot of these guys who aren't the hardcore everyday boxing fans that have a vote, just not trying to throw anyone under the bus, I wonder if they even remember Wilfredo Vasquez.
I would doubt it, man.
Your counterpart, Dan Rafael, wasn't overly excited to hear about it when I tried to reach out to him through a friend. So it was kind of like he's way towards the bottom, and he's got priorities over this man who's been eligible for over 7 years now. So I just wanted to throw it out there for someone who does vote.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? And look, I happen to like Dan, believe it or not. He really pushes for Ivan Calderon, and you know what? I think Vasquez makes a stronger case than Calderon.
Oh.
That's just my opinion.
That's not an opinion. That's a fact.
Ivan Calderon,
I don't know.
Three weight classes. He beat Orlando Canizales, who's a Hall of Famer.
I don't think he beat Canizales, by the way.
Calderon had done that.
I gave the fight to Canizales, man.
That was a tough fight to score. You know, Ivan Calderon, I respected him, but I always called him Bone Thugs and Harmony because, like, Bone Thugs and Harmony, one of his songs, they're all the same. Like, you couldn't tell one from the other. When Calderon fought on pay-per-view cards, I would always make sure to watch the first 3-4 rounds. I was like, okay, they're all the same. Then you go to the bathroom, hang out a little bit, and you come back by the 10th, and it's the same fight.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. That's a fantastic point. It's like a Clarissa Shields fight. Listen, Steve, you said 5 to 10 minutes. I don't want to keep you. So if you want to hop off, get a cup of coffee or whatever, that's fine. But really enjoyed talking to you. You let us know, man.
No, how about this? I'll answer one more question. I got to get inside the dinner here, guys. I got people waiting for me.
All right. Yeah. Who wants to ask the last question?
I got a question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Steve, this is more about the future of boxing, but I've been looking over at middleweight, and 3 of the champions are in their 30s, and I think the future of the division is very dire. There's no real prospects of note at middleweight, and it's what happens after, Charlo gets his retirement fight, Golovkin retires, because I don't think it has a bright future, even compared to like super middleweight. Like, where do you see middleweight going?
Well, I actually think, and I'd have to examine this a little further, but off the top of my head, the 2 guys that I like that I think eventually will be at middleweight, because there's going to be a migration, you're right, either through retirement or guys moving up in weight, and then there'll be a new wave of fighters. From an American perspective, I like Charles Conwell. He's a blue-collar worker. Not spectacular, but he's...
You think he'll move up?
I think eventually he'll be a 161 day. I think right now he's really a true junior middleweight. The other guy that
there's one prospect I do like, Amilcar Vidal.
Yeah.
He had PBC Fight Night.
Right, and the other guy that I liked, I think eventually is going to move up, is very talented, but I wish he'd fight more, is Israel Madrimov. And look, they put him on this fast track where he's fighting these 10, 12 rounders in his 5th pro fight. Look, there's an issue with that. You're not going to get a lot of seasoning. And I think there's very few Vasily Lomachenkos that are well equipped to do that. And Madrimov has a lot of ability, though, guys. He really does. And also,
did you see that punch he landed on Eric Walker?
All right, hold on. MTC. You gotta let him answer the question, man.
And there's a guy. There's a junior middleweight. I forgot his name, but he fights for Camille Estefan, Eye of the Tiger. Camille is very high on. I've seen some clips on him. But you're right. The middleweight, I don't know. Look, in 5 years, we'll be talking about Troy Isley, who just made his debut for Top Rank. Who knows? He doesn't seem like much of a puncher, but he's a good athlete. It's funny. When I was at Buddy McGirt's gym, there was these guys from Kazakhstan who brought a fighter to Buddy McGirt. He's like number one in 160. Outfit called Suleiman, not Mauricio, but Suleiman Promotions, and they were showing me clips of some of their fighters. I'm not going to tell you, they may not be Golovkin, but they're pretty damn good. Maybe one of those guys develops. I have to kind of think about it. Who is that young middleweight that I would stake my future in? That's an interesting question, but we shall see. There's always a new fighter, though. That's the bottom line. There's always going to be a new generation. We may not like what's going on in the business, but gentlemen, we can't help ourselves. We'll continue to watch.
Exactly. Yeah, we're a bunch of junkies, man. We're a bunch of junkies. And like you said, you never know. That's the great thing about boxing and any combat sport. There's always somebody coming up next, and you never know who it's going to be, but there's always somebody willing to fill in the gap there, the talent gap. Steve, can't thank you enough for being on the show, man. Really appreciate it. You answered questions, enlighten us, and we're excited to see what you're going to do next, man. Keep us updated on Twitter, and we'll be sure to follow.
Absolutely, guys. Hey, you guys have a great weekend. Enjoy the fights tomorrow night.
Thank you, man. Same here. Same
Thank
to you,
guys.
man.
You have a great night.
You too, man. Take it easy.